I wanted them to know what sounds he liked or disliked, because there are certain things. The first springs to mind is a Hoover. I didn't think they'd be having a Hoover, but anything like that, it makes him cry, makes him very unhappy. So I wanted them to know that if anything sounded like that, then he would probably react badly.
Yeah.
And sounds that he liked. So if he was unhappy, things that they could do to make it cheer him up again. So birdsong and nursery rhymes and music and things like that. I thought that would be really important. And the other thing was just practically where his hearing aids were, where his little box was, where his batteries were, so that they could, if they needed to change his battery, if they needed to take them out for some reason, they knew where everything was.
So I wanted them to know that she doesn't understand a lot of the language, so they need to explain more to her, try to explain a simpler way more. Plus I wanted them to know that she can be stubborn because of her not understanding. So sometimes when she doesn't understand, she closes herself and she doesn't want to hear anything and speak more. So I wanted them to know how to work around it and trying explaining so she understands obviously everything, because it's the main reason they go to school to learn. So I didn't want her to miss because she doesn't understand.
So for me, I wanted them to know absolutely everything. My son has quite a severe speech and language delay, so he wouldn't be able to tell them about himself. So I wanted to be able to tell them as much as possible, so there wouldn't be any confusion or frustration on his part. So yes, I wanted them to know absolutely everything about him.
One of the biggest things is that the adults who would be dealing with my child are aware of his deafness. So that includes, so my son won't have a hot dinner because the dinner ladies give him a choice and he can't hear what they've said. Now, I'm sure if we progress with that, they would change straight away, but he's lost his confidence in doing that, so won't do it. So it's making sure that every adult that has any dealings with the child is aware. So my son gets really worried that he'll get told off because he hasn't heard an instruction. So if everybody knows and doesn't give him an allowance, but make sure that he's heard what has been told, so he can do the right thing.
I wanted to know things like, what was the building like? So I asked for like a personal tour, so we could see what the acoustics were like, where he would be positioned in the class, that sort of thing, and how what would they do to adapt for my child starting. I wanted to know how they would work together with the teachers of the deaf to ensure that there was consistency with the teachers and who would support my child.
I think the most beneficial thing for me was that I stayed with him in the school for, I think I was in there for a couple of weeks, so that I was explaining what his different noises meant. So if he makes this noise, he's not happy. If he does this noise, he is happy.
Yes.
Different, because his communication is obviously affected by the fact that he can't hear very well.
Yeah.
So, that
quite complex needs, doesn't he? Because it is actually important that staff get to know that communication system.
Yeah, so that was really important, so that I felt comfortable that they knew him well enough to look after him and he wouldn't be just miserable in the corner.
Yeah.
It didn't help. I would say when she gets told off, I think every child doesn't like to be told off, and because of a little language, I think the school needs to try, if they want to like not to punish the child, but just to tell them off. They need to really try to explain why they're really doing this, because she doesn't understand like a normal child. Then she closes herself. She felt sad. She's crying, and with a little explanation, she doesn't understand why she was wrong. So that didn't help.
Yeah.
We got an EHCP in place, so there was really detailed paperwork that they've got and targets set for us to discuss. I asked to meet with the teachers met with me.
And was there anything you felt didn't help?
COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Hasn't helped anything.
So it was a bit tricky, so a lot of it was done on Zoom. There wasn't the transition stuff that we would usually get. Wasn't visiting. It was all very carefully done, and not what usual children would get when transitioning to school. But I felt it actually worked quite well.
Mm-hmm.
There was no groups or anything like that, so it was literally us going in on our own.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, absolutely. So that helped. COVID didn't help. But yeah, meeting with the teachers, definitely.
Things that helped was continuous contact before my child started school, to have conversations with him to make sure he felt reassured, because going from primary school to secondary school is very overwhelming. He was very concerned about people getting used to him with his hearing aids. How would they talk to him? How would the teachers talk to him? What would he do if he had any problems? Who would he go to? So there was a complete plan of all the things that would need to be in place. So my child felt he had like a schedule of what would be needed. And then, of course, the teacher of the deaf was very much involved in that to ensure that they understood what they needed to do.
It was what would happen with other children, because obviously he's got his hearing aid someone could pull out, he could pull his tube. Would he like it? Would he get on with the teachers and the TAs? What else was it? Yeah, would he settle in? I was really worried because he was what, 3, and he'd only really ever been with me, my husband,
Yeah.
and his grandparents. He'd not really had that much to do with other adults without us, and it was that leaving him I was worried about.
I think the first concern is always that it's a little language, and you always think how they're gonna cope, how they're gonna understand, because it's not like 1 or 2 words they're speaking, they're telling stories, and you're thinking how they're gonna understand the story, how they're gonna learn it. So the first concern is always about how they're gonna do it.
I think it's more daunting secondary, because at primary school you've got one teacher or 1 or 2 teachers, and there's quite a communication between primary. You're generally dropping off or picking up, you can email easily, whereas at secondary you don't. My son will walk on his own, he'll walk home on his own. I won't have any input there at all.
It surprised me how easy he seemed to find it. So he settled in much quicker than I expected him to, which made things a lot easier for me. I thought he would be a lot less easygoing, especially with the other children. So I was quite worried that, you go in here and there'd be children running here, running there and making lots of noise. And if there's lots of noise, he just switches off and he won't pay any attention or do anything. But actually, the way they've got the classes sorted, the children were all quite quiet and needed that quiet environment. And it worked really well with that.
You handle more better than I thought you will, because obviously you are more worried than they are. So it took time to get used to it, but she did quite well than I thought she will.
after your advice, we did a little booklet all about me, so about who his other people in his life, so his family members, and his likes, dislikes, and tried to describe what makes him happy and what makes him sad and how to cheer him up and all the stuff that I thought they would need to know on a daily basis, which I think focused my mind on what I needed to tell them and stuff, so that was very helpful. Otherwise it was just normal things like getting my little bag and deciding what I needed to take for him and things like that.
So lots of prep. School were very good. They did social stories. They sent pictures of his teachers and TA. They sent pictures of the classroom. We did a countdown throughout the summer holidays. Luckily, next to our school, there's a park. So we went to the park and lots of talking about the building and all those sorts of things. Oh, I wonder where your classroom's going to be. So that helped. Being there at the time helped whenever we went to visit the park. But the pictures were really, really helpful. They were the most valuable, I think, for us.
From a really young age, we included him in everything. So even from the age of 2, 3, he cleaned his own moulds. He used the little puffer to blow them out. He did everything. And even changing batteries, we've always let him do it with us. So as if ever he's with an adult that doesn't know what they're doing, he would be able to provide some guidance. And obviously now he's 10, he can do it completely on his own. So I think including them in everything, my overall point of everything is arm them and yourselves with knowledge. The more knowledge you have and the more knowledge they have, you can help everybody else. And it's only as he's obviously got older that he can explain more to us about what's happening. So a recent example, everybody was moved around in the classroom. He got sat next to a really, really chatty person. He really couldn't cope because he couldn't hear anything else that was going on. All he could hear was the person sat next to him. So we kind of pushed responsibility to him to say, look, you talk to the teacher then. And he did, and they moved them straight away. So that's huge in terms of he would never have done that a couple of years ago. So clearly he's now very confident at that school. And years ago, he'd have waited for his teacher for the deaf to come in and then told her. So she sorted it for him. But now we're trying to encourage him to do things himself in preparation for secondary school.
The portage worker, she wrote a little report and sent that in about what they've been doing with his play therapy. And then his specialist teachers sent in reports, I think, as well. I think you spoke to the teachers. And a big help was his community nurse because of all the medical stuff. So that was a big part of getting him settled. His teacher had spoken to you guys, I think, before, and so they had your knowledge and background. So that worked really well.
So we had a meeting through the computer, and then I did speak with the teacher a couple times. She did call me a couple times, so I explained the situation. I explained about the child, what to expect. Then I spoke with you as well about everything that concerns me. We spoke with
speech and language therapist,
to help us and to help the school as
Yeah.
well.
I think the biggest thing I didn't know then that I know now is that the best thing you can do for your child is to get in before the start of term with the new teacher, your teacher of the deaf, and yourself, to ensure the teacher can understand everything about your child.
Having involvement with the Senko, but really the overall control was through your services that's what made me and my child feel secure, because that consistency was following through from primary to secondary. So he didn't actually feel that he was starting completely fresh, because he knew he had that support when he moved along, which was a massive difference.
Oh, hugely. He is much more active. He's interactive, so he will. He's learning hand under hand, and he likes to play with you rather than you play with just play with him. I don't think that makes sense.
Just rather than just be sort of on his own, he's sort of letting you into his world more. Yeah.
So it's less passive, and he interacts much better with adults, and I think his world has opened up. So he's more aware of things. He doesn't just switch off like he used to.
Yeah, she has friends now. She speaks more. Yeah, she's quite fine now. She's happy.
I think my top tip is, if you can, go in with them for the first day at least, so that you get to meet who's going to be with your child, so that you can build up a bit of trust, and that you can talk to them about what their needs are. Because it's made me much more comfortable that I'm happy to leave him with them, because that was my major concern, was them not knowing him.
Speaking to the teachers, trying to get as much information as possible about you and about your child, but also getting information about the school as well, so you can prepare your child for what school might look like, because it could be very different to nursery, or if they've not been to nursery at all, just getting used to the class as well.
My advice will be, don't lean only on a school. You have to try to get basic words to the child. You have to teach like numbers, at least ABC, just to help your child to start the school. Don't just lean on the school. They're gonna do everything for us. You have to try to put your progress as well.
Don't be afraid to ask the obvious. Just because you might think it's a obvious question, or it might be small, the teachers or the teaching assistants at the school might not be thinking in the same way as you, because they might not have worked with a deaf child. So it is important to keep relaying things like, don't ask them closed questions, you need to ask them open questions. So even though that's probably in the ethos of the school, but reminding them of things like that, like gently tap them on the shoulder if you want their attention. Try to make things discreet so they feel included and not that they stand out.
Again, it comes back just to talking to us. I mean, I was quite lucky. They were very good in terms of social stories. Like I say, the pictures were the best things for us. Pictures of the cloakroom and the desks and all those sorts of things that might look different. And if you feel your child needs an EHCP, fight for it, because it's well worth it. Well worth it.
And they need more explanation, more in. If you see they're not understanding, try to explain a different way. Showing pictures as well helps. Yeah.
Top tips would be work together with your services. You have the experience, the support. You mainly would know that child very. You'd work with them very closely. So listen to what has been advised to do.
I think, again, getting in early with that initial meeting with your teacher if you're deaf and your new teacher, so as everybody can understand about the child, and making sure every adult that deals with the child knows it isn't just the teacher and the adults in the class. It goes wider in terms of lunchtime supervisors, even in assemblies and things like that, making sure everybody is aware. And also, you need to know what experience they have of dealing with a deaf child. So the school that my son's at really didn't have any experience at all. There's no other children there that are deaf at all. So it was, they didn't even know the simplest of things, such as where is the best place for him to sit in the classroom, and how to talk to him. Really simple things that now just come naturally to us as parents, but didn't to the school initially.
We chose it because we think they had the best staff and environment for him. They've got the whole package. They can look after him medically, emotionally, educational, and yeah, the best place for him to go.
My son was going to the school as well, but the school has hearing impairment stuff as well to help it.
It was mainly listening to my child and what they wanted. They wanted to feel secure to go to that school because their friends were there.
Mhm.
There wasn't a lot of advice about the school with respect to had they dealt with children with hearing issues before. It was mainly to do with the child feeling secure and going with their friends who understood them.